Amanda's trembling hands reached for the door handle as her husband's voice thundered behind her, but it was already too late. The lock clicked, sealing her fate with nothing but her newborn daughter and the clothes on her back. The November rain would soak them both before she reached the street, but what terrified her most was the pair of dark eyes watching from the black sedan across the street. Comment your city below and subscribe to stay connected. Time to dive into the story. 3 hours earlier, Amanda Mitchell had been folding tiny pink onesies in the nursery, believing she still had a home. Her daughter Emma, barely 3 weeks old, slept peacefully in her crib while Amanda tried to catch up on the endless cycle of laundry that came with a newborn. The afternoon light streaming through the windows made everything feel almost normal, almost safe. "Derek," she called softly, hearing her husband's truck rumble into the driveway earlier than usual. He'd been working construction, or at least that's where he said he was going each morning. Lately, she suspected most of his time was spent at Murphy's bar instead of the job site. Amanda's bare feet padded down the hallway of their small ranch house. Emma nestled against her shoulder. Derek stood in the kitchen, his work clothes dirty, his face flushed with the particular redness that meant he'd been drinking since noon. The smell hit her immediately, whiskey and anger, a combination she'd learned to fear over the past few months. "Derek, honey, you're home early," she said carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma stirred slightly, her tiny fist curling against Amanda's collarbone. He turned, and the look in his bloodshot blue eyes made Amanda's stomach clench. "Don't honey me," he slurred, stumbling slightly as he reached for another beer from the refrigerator. "I know what you've been doing." "What are you talking about?" Amanda backed up a step, instinctively positioning herself between Derek and the hallway that led to Emma's room. "I've been here all day with the baby." "Exactly." Derek's voice turned ugly, the way it had more and more since Emma's birth. "Sitting around, spending my money, acting like some kind of princess while I break my back to keep us afloat." Amanda felt the familiar sting of tears behind her eyes, but she fought them back. Crying only made him angrier. "Derek, I just had a baby 3 weeks ago. The doctor said I need to rest, and Emma needs—" "I don't want to hear about what Emma needs," he snapped, and the words hit Amanda like a physical blow. "All I hear about anymore is that kid. What about what I need? What about my life?" The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and Emma's soft breathing. Amanda stared at the man she'd married 2 years ago, the man who'd promised to love and protect her, and saw a stranger. Derek had always liked his beer, but since losing his job 3 months ago, the drinking had become constant, and since Emma's birth, his resentment had grown into something dark and poisonous. "She's your daughter," Amanda whispered, her voice breaking despite her efforts to stay strong. "How can you say that?" Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My daughter? You sure about that?" "Amanda, because I've been thinking about the timing and it doesn't add up right." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Amanda felt the world tilt sideways. "How can you even suggest that? You know you're Emma's father. You were there when she was born. Was I? Or was I just the fool stupid enough to put my name on the birth certificate?" Derek took another long drink, his eyes never leaving Amanda's face. "Maybe that's why she cries all the time. Maybe she knows I'm not really her daddy." Amanda's heart shattered. Emma didn't cry all the time. She was actually a remarkably peaceful baby. But Derek had convinced himself that every sound she made was a personal attack on him. "Derek, please, you're not thinking clearly. Let's just get out." The 2 words dropped between them like stones. "What?" Amanda's voice was barely a whisper. "You heard me. Get out. Take your kid and get out of my house. This is our house. We're married. Emma is your daughter and she needs—" "I said get out!" Derek roared. And Emma started crying, startled by the sudden noise. "I don't want either of you here anymore. You want to play house with someone else's kid? Do it somewhere else." Amanda's legs felt weak. "Derek, please, where am I supposed to go? I don't have any money, and Emma is just a baby. It's November. It's cold outside. Not my problem." Derek's face was stone-cold sober now, despite the alcohol on his breath. "You've got 30 minutes to pack whatever you can carry. After that, I'm calling the cops to have you removed for trespassing." "You can't do this. This is insane." But Derek had already turned away, heading for the living room where she could hear the television click on. The conversation was over. Amanda stood in the kitchen holding her daughter and felt her entire world crumble around her. She had no family nearby. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 20, and she'd been on her own ever since. No siblings, no close friends who could take her in, especially not with a newborn baby. Her savings account had exactly $43 in it. Emma's cries grew louder, and Amanda realized she was shaking. "Shh, baby girl," she whispered, bouncing gently as she tried to think. "It's going to be okay. Mommy's going to figure this out." But as she looked around the kitchen at the high chair Derek had assembled with such excitement just a month ago, at the baby bottles drying by the sink, at the calendar on the wall with Emma's pediatrician appointment marked for next week, she couldn't imagine how anything was ever going to be okay again. 28 minutes later, Amanda stood by the front door with a diaper bag, a small suitcase, and her sleeping daughter. She'd packed as much as she could carry: baby clothes, diapers, formula, a few changes of clothes for herself. The rest of her life photo albums, wedding gifts, the nursery furniture would have to stay behind. Derek sat in his recliner, staring at the television but not really watching. He hadn't looked at her once since she'd started packing. "Derek," Amanda tried one last time, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. "Please don't do this. Emma needs her father. I need my husband. We can work through this. We can get help." "Time's up," he said without turning around. "Lock's changing tomorrow." Amanda looked at him for a long moment, memorizing the face of the man she'd loved, searching for any sign of the person who'd once brought her flowers and talked about their future together. But that man was gone, buried under layers of alcohol and bitterness, and something she was beginning to understand might have been there all along. She opened the front door, and the November wind hit her like a slap. The temperature had dropped since afternoon, and she could smell snow in the air. Emma stirred in her arms, making a small sound of protest against the cold. "It's okay, sweetheart," Amanda whispered, pulling the baby blanket tighter around her daughter. "We're going to be fine. Somehow." She stepped out into the growing darkness, and the door slammed shut behind her. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place was the loneliest sound she'd ever heard. Amanda stood on the porch for a moment, looking up and down the quiet suburban street. Most of the houses had warm lights glowing in their windows, families settling in for the evening, people who had somewhere to belong. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts, but the list was pathetically short. A few work acquaintances from the diner where she'd waitressed before Emma was born, but no one close enough to call in a crisis like this. The only shelter she knew about was downtown, nearly an hour away by bus, if she could even figure out the route with a baby and bags. And she'd heard stories about those places: overcrowded, understaffed, sometimes dangerous. The thought of taking Emma there made her stomach turn. A black sedan that had been parked across the street suddenly started its engine, and Amanda tensed. She hadn't noticed it before, but now she realized it had been sitting there with its lights off. As she watched, the driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, probably in his late 30s, with dark hair and an expensive-looking charcoal coat. Even in the dim streetlight, Amanda could see that he was handsome, in a way that seemed almost dangerous: sharp cheekbones, intense dark eyes, the kind of presence that made people notice him whether they wanted to or not. He started walking toward her, and Amanda's grip tightened on Emma. Every instinct told her to run, but where could she go? She was trapped on the porch with a baby and 2 bags, nowhere to hide, no one to call for help. "Amanda Mitchell." His voice was deep, with a slight accent she couldn't place. "Who's asking?" Amanda lifted her chin, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. Emma chose that moment to wake up and start fussing, and the sound seemed to cut through the evening air like a cry for help. The man's expression softened slightly when he saw the baby. "My name is Salvatore Romano. I think you need help." "I don't know you," Amanda said, but her voice shook slightly. The cold was starting to seep through her sweater, and Emma's cries were getting louder. "How do you know my name?" "I know a lot of things," Salvatore said, stopping a few feet away from the porch. He kept his hands visible, his posture non-threatening, but there was something about him that screamed power and danger. "I know your husband just threw you out of your own home with a 3-week-old baby. I know you have nowhere to go and $43 in your bank account." Amanda's blood ran cold. "How could you possibly? I also know that you're scared. You're cold, and you're about to make a decision that could put both you and your daughter at risk," Salvatore continued, his dark eyes never leaving her face. "I'm here to offer you another option." "What kind of option?" Amanda bounced Emma gently, trying to soothe her cries while keeping her attention focused on this stranger, who somehow knew far too much about her life. Salvatore reached into his coat, and Amanda flinched, but he only pulled out a business card. "I can provide you with a safe place to stay, food, medical care for your daughter, and time to figure out your next move. No strings attached." "There are always strings," Amanda said, but she couldn't help staring at the card in his hand. "What do you want in return?" "Right now, just the chance to help." Salvatore took a step closer, and in the porch light, Amanda could see that his eyes were actually a warm brown, not the cold black she'd first thought. "You don't know me, and you have no reason to trust me, but look around." "Amanda, what other choices do you have?" The question hung in the air between them, and Amanda felt the weight of its truth. Emma's cries were growing more desperate, and Amanda could feel her daughter's tiny body shivering through the blanket. The temperature was dropping fast, and the first few snowflakes had started to fall. "Why?" Amanda asked finally. "Why would you want to help a stranger?" Something flickered across Salvatore's face, pain, maybe, or regret. "Let's just say I understand what it's like to be betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you." Amanda stared at Salvatore Romano for a long moment, her mind racing. Everything logical told her not to trust him. Strange men didn't just appear at exactly the right moment to offer help to desperate women without wanting something in return, but Emma's cries were growing weaker now, and Amanda could feel her daughter's body trembling with cold. "If I come with you," Amanda said slowly, "and I don't like what I see, I can leave immediately. No arguments, no trying to stop me." "You have my word," Salvatore said, and something in his tone made Amanda believe him. "My car is warm, and I have a car seat already installed." That detail stopped Amanda cold. "You have a car seat? How did you—" "I told you. I know a lot of things." Salvatore's expression was unreadable, but there was no threat in his voice. "I also know that your daughter needs to be somewhere warm in the next 10 minutes, or you're going to be dealing with more than just nowhere to sleep." Amanda looked down at Emma, whose lips had taken on a bluish tint that terrified her. She thought about the shelter downtown, about trying to navigate public transportation with a baby and bags in the snow. She thought about walking the streets until she found an all-night diner that would let her sit in a booth until morning. None of those options ended well for Emma. "Okay," Amanda said quietly, "but I want to see identification first." Salvatore nodded and pulled out his wallet, showing her a driver's license that confirmed his name was indeed Salvatore Romano. He was 38, which made him 12 years older than Amanda, and his address was listed in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. "What do you do for a living, Mr. Romano?" "I run several businesses," Salvatore said, which wasn't really an answer. "Import, export, real estate, restaurants, nothing that should concern you right now." Amanda hesitated, but Emma let out a particularly pitiful cry that decided things for her. "All right, but I'm keeping my phone on, and if anything feels wrong—" "You leave immediately," Salvatore finished. "I understand." He led her to the black sedan, which was indeed warm inside and smelled like expensive leather. The car seat was a high-end model that probably cost more than Amanda made in a month of waitressing. Salvatore helped her secure Emma in it, his movements careful and practiced, like he'd done this before. "Do you have children?" Amanda asked as they pulled away from the house that was no longer her home. "I did," Salvatore said quietly, and something in his voice made Amanda decide not to ask any follow-up questions. They drove through the city in relative silence, Emma finally settling into sleep as the car's warmth enveloped her. Amanda watched the neighborhoods change outside her window from suburban middle class to urban decay to something that looked increasingly upscale and exclusive. "Where are we going?" she asked as they turned through massive iron gates into what looked like a private estate. "My home," Salvatore said simply. The mansion that came into view took Amanda's breath away. It was enormous, probably built in the 1920s, with elegant stonework and dozens of windows glowing warmly in the darkness. Manicured gardens surrounded the building, and she could see a fountain in the circular driveway. "This is where you live?" Amanda's voice came out as a squeak. "I have a lot of space," Salvatore said with what might have been amusement, "and I don't like being crowded." He parked near the front entrance, and before Amanda could reach for the door handle, someone was already there opening it for her. A woman in her 60s with kind eyes and graying hair smiled at her warmly. "This is Maria," Salvatore said, coming around to get Emma's car seat. "She manages the household, and has raised 4 children of her own. She's also a registered nurse. "Welcome, dear," Maria said in accented English, and Amanda thought she might cry at the genuine kindness in the older woman's voice. "Let's get you and the little one inside where it's warm." The interior of the mansion was even more impressive than the exterior. High ceilings, original hardwood floors, artwork that looked like it belonged in a museum. But despite the obvious wealth on display, it felt like a home rather than a showcase. "I've prepared a suite on the 2nd floor," Maria said, leading them up a curved staircase. "There's a sitting room, bedroom, and private bathroom, and I've set up a bassinet for the baby right next to your bed." Amanda found herself in a room that was larger than her entire apartment had been. Everything was elegant but comfortable, decorated in soft blues and creams. French doors led out to what looked like a balcony, and a fireplace crackled warmly in one corner. "I don't understand," Amanda said, turning to face Salvatore. "This is too much. Why are you doing this for someone you don't even know?" Salvatore was quiet for a moment, watching as Maria efficiently unpacked Emma from her car seat and checked her over with professional competence. "Let's just say I believe in helping people when they need it most. But what do you want from me in return?" "Nothing," Salvatore said, and the simplicity of the answer made it somehow more believable than any elaborate explanation would have been. "You stay here until you figure out your next move. Maria will help you with whatever you and Emma need. When you're ready to leave, I'll help you find a safe place to go. And if I want to leave tomorrow, then you leave tomorrow." Amanda sank down into an armchair that was probably worth more than her car, still trying to process everything that had happened in the last hour. "I don't understand your world, Mr. Romano." "Good," Salvatore said with a slight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "That means you're still innocent enough to deserve saving." Amanda woke up to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the sound of Emma gurgling contentedly in her bassinet. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was, and then it all came flooding back: Derek's ultimatum, the stranger in the expensive coat, the mansion that felt like something out of a fairy tale. She sat up carefully, her body still aching from the physical and emotional trauma of the day before. Emma was awake and alert, her tiny fists waving in the air as she made the soft baby sounds that never failed to make Amanda's heart melt. "Good morning, beautiful girl," Amanda whispered, lifting her daughter from the bassinet. "Did you sleep well in your fancy new bed?" A soft knock on the door interrupted her morning routine. "Come in," Amanda called, and Maria entered with a tray that smelled like heaven. "I thought you might be hungry," the older woman said, setting the tray on a small table by the window. "There's coffee, fresh fruit, eggs Benedict, and I made some lactation cookies to help with your milk supply." Amanda stared at the spread in amazement. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "No trouble at all," Maria smiled, reaching for Emma. "May I? I miss having babies in the house." Amanda hesitated for just a moment before handing over her daughter. Maria held Emma with the confidence of someone who'd raised children, and Emma seemed immediately comfortable in her arms. "She's beautiful," Maria said softly. "How old?" 3 weeks yesterday," Amanda said, settling down at the table and taking her first sip of coffee. It was perfect, rich and strong, and exactly what she needed. "And the father?" Amanda's face must have shown her pain, because Maria immediately looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, dear, that's not my business." "It's okay," Amanda said, though her voice was tight. Her father decided yesterday that he didn't want to be a father anymore. Maria made a disgusted sound under her breath and said something in what sounded like Italian. Amanda got the general impression it wasn't complimentary toward Derek. "Some men," Maria said finally, "are not worthy of the gifts they're given." Amanda was halfway through the most delicious breakfast she'd ever eaten when Salvatore appeared in the doorway. He was dressed more casually today, in dark jeans and a grey sweater that probably cost more than Amanda's monthly rent, but he still had that aura of controlled power that had been so intimidating the night before. "Good morning," he said, his attention immediately going to Emma in Maria's arms. "How did you both sleep?" "Better than I expected," Amanda admitted. "This is all very generous, Mr. Romano." "Salvatore," he corrected. "And I'm glad you're comfortable." He moved into the room, and Amanda noticed the way Maria's entire posture changed around him. Not fearful exactly, but respectful in a way that suggested Salvatore commanded that kind of deference from everyone in his household. "I need to go out for a few hours this morning," Salvatore said, sitting down across from Amanda. "Maria will be here if you need anything, and my driver can take you anywhere you need to go. Actually, Amanda said carefully, I should probably start looking for a job, and maybe an apartment I can actually afford. Salvatore was quiet for a moment. What kind of work did you do before? I was a waitress at Romano's diner. Amanda paused. Wait, Romano's, is that one of mine? Yes, Salvatore said with the hint of a smile. Small world. Amanda felt her cheeks flush. You own the restaurant where I worked? I own several restaurants. And yes, before you ask, that's how I knew about your situation. Tony mentioned that one of his best waitresses had to quit suddenly after having a baby. And then yesterday I heard about a young woman being thrown out of her home with an infant. You heard about it? From who? Salvatore's expression became unreadable. I hear about a lot of things, Amanda. It's part of my business. There was something in his tone that made Amanda's skin prickle with awareness. What kind of business exactly? The kind that allows me to help people when they need it, Salvatore said, which wasn't really an answer. Before Amanda could press the issue, Emma started crying, and Maria immediately stood to bring her back to Amanda. She's hungry, I think. I should feed her, Amanda said, and felt herself blushing again. Privately. Of course, Salvatore stood immediately. I'll be back this evening. Maria, make sure they have everything they need. After he left, Amanda settled into a comfortable chair to nurse Emma, and Maria sat nearby with some mending. How long have you worked for Mr. Romano? Amanda asked. 20 years, Maria said without looking up from her sewing. Since he was just a boy, really, trying to hold everything together after his father died. He lost his father young? Maria's hands stilled. Both parents, actually. He was 23 when he inherited everything. Too young for such responsibility, but he didn't have a choice. What happened to them? That's not my story to tell, Maria said gently. But I will say this: Salvatore Romano is a good man who's had to make difficult choices. Don't judge him too harshly if you learn things about him that scare you. Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of things? The kind that allow him to protect the people he cares about, Maria said, and her tone suggested the conversation was over. That afternoon, while Emma napped, Amanda explored the mansion. It was even larger than she'd thought, with dozens of rooms, most of which seemed to be rarely used. But the ones that were lived in felt warm and welcoming, despite their obvious luxury. She found Salvatore's study on the first floor, the door slightly ajar. She probably shouldn't have looked, but curiosity got the better of her. The room was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive desk that looked like it had been there for decades. What caught her attention, though, were the photographs. There were pictures of Salvatore with various people, some in formal settings that looked like business dinners, others more casual. In several photos, he was with a beautiful dark-haired woman and a little boy who looked to be about 5 years old. The family resemblance between the boy and Salvatore was unmistakable. Amanda was so absorbed in studying the photographs that she didn't hear footsteps behind her until a voice made her jump. "That's my son, Marco," Salvatore said quietly. Amanda spun around, her face burning with embarrassment at being caught snooping. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's all right," Salvatore said, moving past her to pick up one of the photographs. "He would be 8 now." "Would be?" Salvatore's jaw tightened. "Car accident, 3 years ago. He and his mother were both killed." Amanda's heart clenched. "I'm so sorry, I can't imagine." "No," Salvatore said quietly. "So you can't, and I hope you never have to." He set the photograph back down carefully, and Amanda saw his hands tremble slightly. "Is that why you helped me? Because of your son?" "Partly." Salvatore turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes made Amanda want to reach out to him. "When I saw you standing on that porch with Emma, crying because the man who should have protected you had thrown you away, it reminded me that not everyone gets a second chance to do the right thing." "What do you mean?" Salvatore was quiet for a long moment. "I wasn't always a good husband or father. I thought I had time to figure it out, to be better. Then time ran out." Amanda felt tears prick her eyes. "Salvatore, I can't bring back my family," he said simply, "but maybe I can help you keep yours safe." Over the next week, Amanda fell into a routine at the Romano mansion that felt surprisingly natural. She'd wake up with Emma, have breakfast with Maria, spend the mornings walking through the extensive gardens or playing with her daughter in the sunny sitting room. Afternoons were for napping and reading, evenings for quiet dinners where Salvatore would join them when he was home. Amanda was beginning to understand that Salvatore's business kept him away frequently. He'd disappear for hours at a time, sometimes not returning until late at night. When she asked Maria about it, the older woman would just say he had many responsibilities and leave it at that. But Amanda was starting to piece things together, the way people spoke to Salvatore with a mixture of respect and fear when they called the house. The fact that he seemed to know things about people that ordinary businessmen wouldn't know, the expensive security system, and the men in dark suits who sometimes appeared in the driveway. She was also starting to realize that her feelings for Salvatore Romano were growing into something that terrified her. He was gentle with Emma, patient with Amanda's questions, and protective in a way that made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. When he smiled at something funny Emma did, or when he listened intently to Amanda talk about her dreams for her daughter's future, she could almost forget about the dangerous undercurrents she sensed in his world. It was on a Thursday evening that everything changed. Amanda was feeding Emma in the sitting room when she heard raised voices from somewhere downstairs. She couldn't make out words, but the tone was unmistakably angry, and one of the voices was definitely Salvatore's. She'd never heard him sound like that before, cold, commanding, deadly. A few minutes later, Maria appeared in the doorway, her face pale and worried. "Amanda, dear, I need you to stay in your room tonight. Lock the door and don't come out until I come get you in the morning." "What's wrong?" Amanda stood up, clutching Emma closer. "Is something happening?" "Just a precaution," Maria said, but her hands were shaking as she moved around the room, closing curtains and checking the windows. "Sometimes Mr. Romano's business requires privacy." "What kind of business requires—" "The kind you don't want to know about," Maria said firmly. "Please, Amanda, for your safety and Emma's, just do as I ask." Amanda had never seen Maria look scared before, and it terrified her. She locked the door as requested and sat in the armchair by the window, holding Emma and straining to hear what was happening in the house below. Occasionally she caught the sound of voices, but she couldn't make out words. Around midnight, a car started up in the driveway and drove away fast. Then the house fell silent. Amanda barely slept that night, and when Maria knocked on her door the next morning, the older woman looked like she hadn't slept at all. "Is everything all right?" Amanda asked immediately. "Everything's fine," Maria said, but she wouldn't meet Amanda's eyes. "Mr. Romano had to handle some business, but it's all taken care of now." "Where is he?" "He'll be back soon. He asked me to tell you that nothing has changed, you're still safe here." But something had changed, and Amanda could feel it. There was a tension in the house that hadn't been there before, a sense of something dark hovering just beneath the surface of the elegant rooms and peaceful routines. When Salvatore finally returned that afternoon, Amanda was waiting for him in the study. He looked exhausted, his usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled, and there was something in his eyes that made Amanda's blood run cold. "We need to talk," Amanda said without preamble. Salvatore poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter and downed it in one gulp. "About what?" "About what happened last night. About what kind of business you really run. About why Maria was scared enough to lock us in our room." Salvatore set down his glass and looked at her for a long moment. "You don't want to know the answers to those questions, Amanda." "Yes, I do." Amanda lifted her chin, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I'm not a child, Salvatore. I have a daughter to protect, and I need to know what kind of world we're living in." "You're living in a world where you're safe," Salvatore said. "That's all you need to know." "That's not good enough anymore." Salvatore moved closer, and Amanda could see the exhaustion and something else, guilt, maybe etched into his face. "You want to know what kind of business I run? Fine. I control territory. I settle disputes. I make sure certain people understand the consequences of crossing certain lines." "You're talking about crime." "I'm talking about order," Salvatore corrected. "I'm talking about protection for people who can't protect themselves." "And last night?" Salvatore's jaw tightened. "Last night someone threatened something that belongs to me. I made sure they understood that was a mistake." Amanda felt her stomach drop. "Someone threatened me or Emma?" "No," Salvatore said quickly. "Not directly, but the threat was close enough to this house that I had to handle it." "Handle it how?" "In a way that ensures it won't happen again." Amanda stared at him, trying to process what he was telling her without actually saying it. "You hurt someone." "I protected you," Salvatore said simply. "I protected Emma. I protected my home. By hurting someone. By doing what was necessary." Amanda sank into the chair behind Salvatore's desk, her legs suddenly weak. "Oh God, what have I gotten myself into?" Salvatore knelt beside the chair, his hands gentle on her arms. "Amanda, look at me. You haven't gotten yourself into anything. You're under my protection now, which means you're safer than you've ever been in your life. From everyone except you." Pain flashed across Salvatore's face. "I would never hurt you or Emma. Never. But you hurt other people. When I have to. Yes." Amanda closed her eyes, trying to think clearly. When she opened them again, Salvatore was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "I should leave," she said quietly. "Where will you go?" "I don't know. But I can't stay here knowing that your protection comes at the cost of someone else's pain." "You think the world outside these walls is clean?" Salvatore asked, his voice gentle but firm. "You think there aren't people out there who would hurt you and Emma just because they could? Amanda, your husband threw you out on the street with a baby in November. That's a different kind of violence, but it's violence all the same." Amanda felt tears start to fall. "But that doesn't make what you do right." "No," Salvatore agreed quietly. "It doesn't. But it makes it necessary." He stood up, moving back to his desk and pulling out a thick envelope. "There's enough money in here to get you started somewhere new. An apartment, a few months' expenses, whatever you need." Amanda stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "You're paying me to leave. I'm giving you the choice to leave safely. And if I stay?" Salvatore's dark eyes met hers. "If you stay, you accept that this is who I am. You accept that protecting the people I care about sometimes requires me to make choices that good people shouldn't have to make." Amanda looked at the envelope, then at Salvatore, then toward the door where she knew Emma was napping peacefully upstairs in the safest place she'd ever known. "I need to think," she said finally. "Take all the time you need," Salvatore said. "But Amanda?" He waited until she looked at him again. "Whatever you decide, know that having you and Emma here has been the first light I've felt in my life since I lost my family. If you leave, I'll understand, but I'll never forget what it felt like to have something worth protecting again." As Amanda walked back to her room, the envelope heavy in her hands, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to make a decision that would change everything. The question was whether she was brave enough to choose love over safety, or if she would run from the darkness that seemed to follow Salvatore Romano wherever he went. In the distance, she heard a phone ringing, and Salvatore's voice answering with the cold authority she was beginning to understand was as much a part of him as his gentleness with her daughter. Some decisions, Amanda realized, couldn't be made with logic alone. Sometimes you had to choose with your heart and hope it was strong enough to survive the consequences. Amanda sat in her room for 3 hours, staring at the envelope Salvatore had given her, while Emma slept peacefully in her bassinet. The money inside could buy her freedom. A fresh start somewhere far from the dangerous world she'd glimpsed, but it would also mean walking away from the man who'd shown her more kindness in 2 weeks than her own husband had in 2 years of marriage. When Maria knocked softly on the door around dinner time, Amanda had made her decision. "I'm staying," Amanda said simply when she found Salvatore in his study later that evening. He looked up from the papers scattered across his desk, and something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, mixed with something that looked like fear. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "Because once you make this choice, there's no going back to the way things were before you knew the truth." "I know." Amanda moved closer, setting the unopened envelope on his desk. "But Emma deserves to grow up in a home where she's wanted and protected, and I deserve to be with someone who looks at me like I matter." Salvatore stood slowly, his dark eyes never leaving her face. "Amanda, you need to understand what this means. My world isn't just dangerous, it's permanent. The people I deal with, the choices I have to make, they don't go away because we want them to." "Then teach me," Amanda said, surprising herself with her own boldness. "Show me how to survive in your world. That's not a lesson I ever wanted to give someone like you." "Someone like me? Someone pure," Salvatore said softly, reaching out to touch her cheek. "Someone who still believes in goodness." Amanda leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his palm against her skin. "Maybe you need someone who believes in goodness. Maybe that's exactly what your world is missing." Salvatore's thumb traced along her cheekbone, and Amanda saw something break open in his expression. "You're going to change everything," he whispered. "Is that bad?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'm willing to find out." He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she might disappear if he held her too tightly. Amanda felt something deep inside her chest unfurl, a warmth that had nothing to do with physical attraction and everything to do with finally feeling like she belonged somewhere. When they broke apart, Salvatore rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it's too soon and too complicated, but I needed you to know. I love you too," Amanda whispered back, and felt the truth of it settle into her bones like coming home. Over the following days, Salvatore began introducing Amanda to his world more gradually. She met some of his associates' men who spoke in careful euphemisms and treated her with a respect that seemed to have everything to do with Salvatore's obvious protection of her. She learned that his import business was actually legitimate, though it provided convenient cover for less legal activities. "Information is power," Salvatore explained one morning, while Emma played on a blanket nearby. "People tell me things because they want my protection or my business. I use that information to maintain order." "What kind of order?" "The kind that keeps drug dealers away from schools. The kind that makes sure business owners can operate without being robbed. The kind that protects families like yours from people like your ex-husband." Amanda felt a chill at the mention of Derek. "You've been watching Derek?" "I've been making sure he doesn't become a problem for you or Emma," Salvatore said carefully. "What does that mean?" "It means he won't be bothering you again." Something in his tone made Amanda decide not to ask for specifics. Some truths, she was learning, were easier to live with when they remained unspoken. Amanda's new life at the Romano mansion continued to feel like a dream, right up until the moment her past came crashing back into it. She was in the garden with Emma on a sunny afternoon in early December when Maria appeared at the back door, her face pale with worry. "Amanda, dear, you need to come inside right now," Maria said, her voice tight with controlled panic. "What's wrong?" Amanda scooped Emma up from her blanket, immediately alert to the tension radiating from the older woman. "There's someone here to see you. Someone you probably don't want to see." Amanda's blood turned to ice. "Derek. He's in the front parlor with Mr. Romano. They're having what you might call a discussion." Amanda hurried into the house, Maria close behind her. As they approached the front of the mansion, she could hear voices Salvatore's calm and controlled, and another voice that made her stomach clench with familiar dread. "I want my wife back," Derek's voice carried down the hallway, slurred slightly with alcohol even though it was barely 3 in the afternoon. "And I want my kid." "Your wife filed for abandonment after you threw her out of her own home," Salvatore replied, his voice dangerously quiet. "Your parental rights were terminated when you refused to provide support for your child." Amanda felt the world tilt sideways. "What parental rights? What filing?" she whispered to Maria. "Mr. Romano has excellent lawyers," Maria said quietly. "He's been protecting you legally as well as physically." From the parlor, Derek's voice rose. "You can't just steal a man's family. I don't care how much money you have or how many people work for you. Amanda is my wife and that kid is mine." "Amanda is under my protection now," Salvatore said, and there was something in his tone that made Amanda's skin prickle with awareness of just how dangerous he could be. "As is Emma. You gave up any claim to them when you abandoned them." "I didn't abandon nobody. I just needed some time to think, and when I came back they were gone. You locked them out of their home at night with a 3-week-old baby. That's between me and my wife." Amanda heard footsteps, and Maria quickly ushered her and Emma into a side room. "Stay here," Maria whispered. "Let Mr. Romano handle this." But Amanda couldn't just hide while Derek tried to destroy the new life she'd built. She handed Emma to Maria and walked toward the parlor, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. She found Derek standing near the fireplace, swaying slightly, his clothes dirty and his face flushed with anger and alcohol. He looked like he'd been living rough for weeks. When he saw her, his expression shifted to something that might have been relief if it hadn't been tinged with so much rage. "Amanda, baby, thank God, I've been looking everywhere for you." "Don't," Amanda said quietly, staying near the doorway where Salvatore could easily reach her if needed. "Don't call me that. You lost the right to call me anything when you threw me out. I made a mistake, okay? I was drunk and scared and I said things I didn't mean. But I'm sober now and I want my family back." Amanda almost laughed at the lie she could smell the whiskey on him from across the room. "You're not sober, Derek, and even if you were, it's too late." "Too late?" Derek's voice rose, and Amanda saw Salvatore tense beside his desk, ready to move if necessary. "Today's too late because you're sleeping with this gangster, because you'd rather be some criminal's whore than my wife?" The words hit Amanda like a slap, but before she could respond, Salvatore was moving. He crossed the room in 3 quick strides and had Derek pressed against the mantelpiece, one hand around his throat. "You will not speak to her that way," Salvatore said, his voice deadly quiet. "You will not speak to her at all." Derek struggled against Salvatore's grip, his face turning red. Get your hands off me. You can't. I can do whatever I want in my own home, Salvatore said. And right now what I want is for you to understand that Amanda and Emma are off limits to you. Permanently. She's my wife. Not anymore. Salvatore released Derek abruptly, letting him stumble backward. Amanda filed for divorce yesterday. You'll be served with papers within the week. Amanda stared at Salvatore in shock. I did what? Emergency divorce proceedings, Salvatore explained without taking his eyes off Derek. Abandonment, failure to provide support, emotional abuse. My lawyers assure me it will be finalized within 30 days. Derek's face twisted with fury. You can't do this. You can't just steal my life. I didn't steal anything, Salvatore said coldly. You threw it away. Amanda, Derek turned to her, desperation making his voice crack. You can't do this to me. I'm Emma's father. I have rights. You gave up your rights when you said she wasn't your daughter, Amanda said, finding her voice at last. You gave up everything when you chose alcohol over your family. I was scared. I didn't know how to be a father. But I can learn. No, Amanda said firmly. You can't. Because being a father isn't something you learn, Derek. It's something you feel. And you don't feel anything for Emma, except resentment. Derek stared at her for a long moment, and she saw the exact moment when desperation turned back into rage. Fine, he said, his voice turning ugly. You want to play house with your gangster boyfriend? You want to pretend you're too good for me now? We'll see about that. Is that a threat? Salvatore asked, stepping closer to Derek again. It's a promise, Derek snarled. You think you're so tough with your fancy house and your expensive suits? I know people too. People who don't like outsiders moving in on their territory. Salvatore went very still. What people? But Derek was already moving toward the door, stumbling slightly but managing to stay upright. You'll find out soon enough. After he left, the parlor fell silent except for the sound of Amanda's ragged breathing. She sank into the nearest chair, her legs suddenly too weak to hold her up. He knows something, she said quietly. About your business. He's planning something. Salvatore nodded grimly. Yes, he is. What do we do? Salvatore pulled out his phone, already dialing. We make sure he doesn't get the chance to follow through. The next few days passed in tense quiet. Salvatore increased security around the mansion, and Amanda noticed more men in dark suits stationed around the property. She tried to maintain normal routines for Emma's sake, but the constant awareness of watching eyes and potential danger made everything feel fragile and temporary. You're scared, Salvatore observed one evening, as they sat in the study after Emma had gone to sleep. Terrified, Amanda admitted. Derek was never smart, but he was always vindictive. If he's connected with people who could hurt you, they can't, Salvatore said simply. I've been in this business for 15 years, Amanda. I've survived worse threats than anything Derek Mitchell could arrange. But what if... Salvatore moved to the couch where Amanda was sitting, pulling her into his arms. What if I promise you that nothing will happen to you or Emma? What if I give you my word that Derek will never be able to threaten this family again? How can you promise something like that? Because I'm very good at making problems disappear permanently. The way he said it made Amanda shiver, but not entirely with fear. There was something darkly comforting about being protected by someone who had the power to eliminate threats completely. I don't want you to do anything that will put you in danger, Amanda said softly. Everything I do puts me in danger, Salvatore replied, but having you and Emma here gives me something worth being careful for. He kissed her gently, and Amanda felt some of the tension leave her body. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The call came at 2 in the morning. Amanda woke to the sound of Salvatore's phone ringing insistently on the nightstand. He'd started sleeping in the sitting room of her suite a few nights ago, close enough to protect her and Emma, but still maintaining some semblance of propriety. Romano, Salvatore answered, his voice immediately alert, despite having been sound asleep moments before. Amanda couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Salvatore's expression grow increasingly grim. When? He asked tersely. How many? A pause. No, don't engage. Fall back and wait for my orders. He hung up and was already reaching for his clothes. What's wrong? Amanda sat up, her heart pounding. Derek brought friends, Salvatore said, pulling on a black sweater. They're trying to get onto the property. Friends? 3 men with bolt cutters and what looks like firearms, Salvatore said grimly. Stay here. Lock the door behind me and don't open it for anyone except Maria. Salvatore, wait. But he was already gone, moving with lethal efficiency toward whatever confrontation awaited him downstairs. Amanda locked the door as instructed, then moved to the window. The mansion's grounds were lit by carefully placed security lights, and she could see dark figures moving near the perimeter fence. As she watched, more figures appeared, Salvatore's men, surrounding the intruders with military precision. Emma woke up crying, startled by the tension in the air, and Amanda scooped her up, bouncing gently while trying to see what was happening outside. Suddenly there was shouting, then silence. Amanda waited in the dark room for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. When she finally heard footsteps in the hallway, her heart leaped into her throat. "Amanda!" Salvatore's voice called through the door. "It's me, you can open up." She unlocked the door with shaking hands and found Salvatore standing there, his clothes disheveled, but his expression calm. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's handled," Salvatore said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. "Derek and his friends have been convinced to find other entertainment for the evening." "Convinced how?" "In a way that ensures they won't be back." Amanda studied his face, looking for signs of violence but found none. Whatever had happened outside, Salvatore had managed it without getting his hands dirty. "They're alive?" she asked quietly. "They're alive," Salvatore confirmed, though Derek may have some new medical bills to worry about. "And this is really over." Salvatore was quiet for a moment. "Derek Mitchell is no longer a problem for this family," he said finally. "I can promise you that." Something in his tone made Amanda decide not to ask for details. Some problems, she was learning, were better solved permanently. "What happens now?" she asked instead. "Now we get married," Salvatore said, and Amanda's heart stopped. "What?" "I should have asked properly," Salvatore said, suddenly looking uncertain for the first time since she'd known him. "I should have gotten down on one knee and had flowers and a ring." "Salvatore," Amanda interrupted, laughing despite everything. "Are you proposing to me at 2 in the morning after we were just attacked by my ex-husband?" "Apparently." "Yes," Salvatore said with a sheepish smile, "though when you put it that way it sounds like terrible timing." "It's perfect timing," Amanda said, reaching up to cup his face, "because now I know exactly what I'm saying yes to." The wedding was small and private, held in the mansion's garden exactly 1 week later. Maria cried through the entire ceremony, Emma gurgled happily in her christening gown, and Salvatore looked at Amanda like she'd hung the moon. "You may kiss the bride," the judge said, and Salvatore didn't need to be told twice. The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promises about the future they would build together. When they broke apart, Amanda felt like her heart might burst from happiness. "Mrs. Romano," Salvatore murmured against her lips. "Mrs. Romano," Amanda repeated, liking the sound of it. The reception was equally intimate, just the three of them plus Maria and a few of Salvatore's closest associates. Amanda was surprised to discover that the dangerous men who worked for her new husband were actually quite charming dinner companions when they weren't handling business. "To new beginnings," Salvatore raised his champagne glass in a toast. "To family," Amanda corrected, looking down at Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms. "To family," everyone echoed. As the evening wound down and their guests departed, Amanda found herself alone with Salvatore in the garden, where they'd just become husband and wife. "Any regrets?" Salvatore asked, pulling her close. "About marrying a dangerous man after knowing him for less than a month?" Amanda pretended to consider it. "Not a single one." "Good," Salvatore said, "because I have something to tell you." Amanda felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. "What kind of something?" "The kind that might change how you feel about me." "Salvatore, whatever it is, Derek is dead." The words hung between them in the cool night air. Amanda felt all the breath leave her lungs. "What?" 3 days ago, Salvatore said quietly. "He overdosed in a motel room outside the city. The police ruled it accidental, but you made sure it happened," Amanda finished. Salvatore nodded. "He was never going to stop, Amanda. He was already talking to people about you. About Emma. About ways to hurt me through you. I couldn't let that continue." Amanda was quiet for a long moment, processing what he'd told her. She should have been horrified. She should have been disgusted. Instead, she felt something that might have been relief. "He was planning to hurt Emma," she said finally, "among other things. And now he can't." "Now he can't," Salvatore confirmed. Amanda looked up at the man who'd just become her husband, the man who'd killed her daughter's biological father to protect them, and felt something settle into place in her chest. "I should be upset," she said quietly. "You should be, but I'm not." Salvatore's arms tightened around her. "Does that make you a monster too?" "No," Amanda said firmly. "It makes me a mother." They stood together in the garden, holding each other while Emma slept peacefully between them, and Amanda realized that some kinds of love required a willingness to accept darkness. Some kinds of protection came at costs that good people weren't supposed to be willing to pay, but she was willing to pay them. For Emma's safety, for Salvatore's love, for the family they were building from the ashes of everything that had come before. "No more secrets," Amanda said. "No more secrets," Salvatore agreed. "And no more people who want to hurt our family." Salvatore's smile was sharp and dangerous and completely devoted. Never again. 6 months later, Amanda stood in the nursery they'd created for Emma, watching her daughter play with blocks on the soft carpet. At 9 months old, Emma was a happy, healthy baby who'd never known a day without being completely loved and protected. "She's getting so big," Salvatore said from the doorway, and Amanda turned to smile at her husband. "She'll be walking soon," Amanda said. "Maria says she's already pulling herself up on the furniture when she thinks no one's looking." Salvatore moved into the room, sitting cross-legged on the floor so Emma could crawl over to him. She immediately reached for his face with her tiny hands, babbling something that might have been dada or might have been nonsense. "Do you think she'll remember him?" Amanda asked quietly. "Derek, I mean, when she's older." "She was 3 weeks old when you came here," Salvatore said, letting Emma grab his finger. "Her first real memories will be of this house, of us. Derek will just be a name on a birth certificate." Amanda nodded, feeling the familiar sense of relief that came with knowing Emma would never have to deal with Derek's anger or abandonment. Salvatore had made sure of that. "I have something for you," Salvatore said, pulling a thick envelope from his jacket pocket. "What is it?" "Adoption papers," Salvatore said simply. "If you're comfortable with it, I'd like to legally adopt Emma, make her a Romano officially." Amanda felt tears spring to her eyes. "You want to adopt her?" "I want to be her father in every way that matters," Salvatore said. "I want her to have my name and my protection, and my love for the rest of her life." Amanda sank down onto the floor beside them, overwhelmed with gratitude and love, and the sheer impossibility of how perfectly everything had worked out. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want that too." Salvatore leaned over and kissed her softly, while Emma clapped her hands and giggled, apparently delighted by the attention. "There's one more thing," Salvatore said, and Amanda saw something shy and uncertain in his expression. "What?" "I was thinking Emma might need a little brother or sister eventually. If you wanted. If we wanted." Amanda's heart skipped a beat. "You want more children?" "I want everything with you," Salvatore said simply. "More children, more years, more life together. I want to build something permanent and beautiful and safe." Amanda looked around the nursery at the hand-painted murals Maria had commissioned, at the rocking chair where she nursed Emma every morning, at the man who'd saved them both from a life of fear and loneliness. "I want that too," she said. As if summoned by their conversation about the future, Maria appeared in the doorway with a knowing smile. "Dinner is ready when you are," she said, "and I've already prepared Emma's bath for after." "Thank you, Maria," Amanda said, standing and reaching for her daughter. But Emma had other ideas, wrapping her arms around Salvatore's neck and refusing to let go. "I think someone has chosen her favorite person," Maria laughed. "Smart girl," Salvatore said, standing easily despite Emma's grip on him. "She knows who's going to spoil her the most." "You're going to ruin her," Amanda warned, but she was smiling as she said it. "Absolutely," Salvatore agreed. "She deserves to be ruined a little." As they made their way downstairs for dinner, Emma babbling contentedly in Salvatore's arms, Amanda reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been a scared, abandoned young mother with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Now she was married to a man who would move mountains to protect her, living in a house filled with love and laughter, watching her daughter grow up safe and cherished. It hadn't been an easy path. There had been darkness and danger and choices that would have horrified the person she used to be. But sometimes the most beautiful things grew from the darkest soil. "What are you thinking about?" Salvatore asked as they entered the dining room. "Just how different everything is," Amanda said. "How different I am. Better different." Amanda looked at her husband holding her daughter, at the table Maria had set with care, at the life they'd built together from nothing but hope and determination. "Much better different," she said. After dinner, they tucked Emma into her crib and stood watching her sleep, Salvatore's arms wrapped around Amanda from behind. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you too," Amanda whispered back. Outside, the city hummed with life and danger and possibility. But inside the Romano mansion, their small family was safe and complete and perfectly content to face whatever tomorrow might bring, together.